It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome back to another podcast by George. Well, another day in the pandemic, another day in the self-quarantine. Now, personally, I'm getting vaccinated. I'm in that age group where I'm going to be fully vaccinated here very shortly, folks. I'm happy to say, and I know because it's my age group, a lot of people that are in that category. So I want to talk to our expert, Dr. Andrew Nish, about what that means as far as protocols are concerned. And what the rest of us can expect here as we continue to work through this. And it looks like maybe we're seeing some improvement. We'll see what he has to say. Well, let's welcome him on in to another podcast by George. Dr. Nish, welcome.
Hey, good morning, George.
Now, what do you hear as far as the Heartland is concerned? How are we doing here as hospital rates and patients on ventilators and that type of thing? Is there actual significant improvement that you're seeing?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, almost certainly. So when you say Heartland, I'm talking about North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Infection rates are down, hospitalization rates are down. I can speak for my hospital. You know, last week we were averaging 30 to 35 patients in the hospital, maybe one or two on ventilators. So we're doing well from that aspect at this point. Now, you know, we've reopened bars and gymnasiums and everything else without masking, and we'll see in 3 or 4 weeks if we're saying the same thing or not.
You know, the overly optimistic might look at it and say, well, that's because the vaccinations are rolling out. Well, I said it's too early for that. Well, and the pessimist could look at it and say the people that are most at risk have already been struck down by COVID. So that's one reason that you're not seeing so many people on ventilators and in hospitals. I don't really think either one of those scenarios are exactly accurate.
Yeah, the vaccination makes no sense because we've only vaccinated a small fraction. Only a small fraction of the population's actually gotten two doses of the vaccine. And frankly, that the population that's gotten 2 doses are either healthcare workers or people over 65. Those aren't the people that are causing the transmission. It's younger people going to bars and restaurants and things like that. So the vaccine does not explain that. Those who are going to get infected have gotten infected. We don't know that because we're not doing antibody testing on everybody. So, you know, when you listen to the epidemiologists and you listen to the Mike Osterholms of the world, you know, we've had X number of people who we know have been infected, but most experts think that anywhere from 3 to 10 times that many people have been infected and never got tested. So I don't think we really know how many people have actually been infected, how many people have developed neutralizing antibodies to the vaccine, but it's certainly more than the 25, 27 million that we know have tested positive.
You know, this podcast, I sometimes think of alternate names for. When it comes to politics, I think I ought to name it insult to injury a lot of times. When it comes to this healthcare issue that you and I have been discussing now for months in the pandemic, it could be something like manage your expectations. And I wanted to talk about that, particularly with people now that are getting their second vaccination. There's a lot of excitement for that. I'm, excited as well to get that. Everybody is. It's just another step in the right direction, obviously. But I'm also telling people that, well, your options are still going to be very limited. There are still protocols that have to be followed. What's your advice to people now? Let's look at that 65 and older group that is getting their second vaccination. They've got to wait 4 to 6 weeks for that to be fully effective. And then what?
So, yeah, let's go. Do you want to touch on, the whole vaccine 2-dose thing first, or do you want to go to another question
please.
For that? So the second dose, with the Pfizer vaccine, with 3 weeks after the first, the Moderna 4 weeks after the first, the CDC has come out with guidelines saying that you can have the dose up to 6 weeks after the first dose, whether it's the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. And people get all concerned, oh my gosh, it's after 3 weeks or it's after 4 weeks. It's okay. it's okay. You're going to be protected just as well if you got it at 6 weeks as 4 weeks. Now, after that period of time, the CDC is not recommending that you go farther than that. And so what's happening in a lot of communities right now is there's some worry about enough vaccines for getting people the second dose. So they're holding back appointments on the first dose. That's all going to change, I think, in the next few weeks. So once you've had your second dose, you develop full immunity 4 to 6 weeks later. And then people say, well, I can go do anything I want. Well, that's not true because we've not reached herd immunity. So we don't have enough people who have immunity to the virus to slow the spread of the virus at this point. So we continue to have to practice good public hygiene. And that means continuing to wear your mask, protecting other people from you. Because the other thing that we're just learning is if I get vaccinated, can I be infective? Can I still have the virus, shedding it in my nasopharynx, not have symptoms, and be giving that virus to other people? We think that's probably true, probably at lower inoculation doses. So we still want to practice public hygiene, masking, physical distancing. Just know that the vaccine is protecting you from getting a severe case of COVID and protecting you from going to the hospital and dying.
Talk about this a little because now make sure that I got this straight. Now, 95% of efficacy with these with Moderna and Pfizer, roughly. And I tell people, well, that sounds really great. But if you've ever played poker before, I looked this up just to get the percentages. It's like playing 5-card stud or draw, getting 5 cards dealt to you and being dealt 2 pair out of those 5 cards. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but it's not a miracle. It's not unbelievable. I've had it happen to me a lot. I've played a lot of poker, folks, but I'm telling you, I've been dealt 2 pair before in 5 cards. That's the same likelihood as the 5% likelihood that you could still be infected. But the key here, as I understand it, is even if you're in that 5% unlucky poker hand, you're probably going to be less severely affected. Is that what we're thinking?
I'm not sure we can say that. I mean, we know that 95% of people are going to be protected so that they don't get severe disease and end up in the hospital. I don't know if we've really defined that other 5%. The other thing we have to remember, though, is the Moderna study and the Pfizer study were done before there was mass circulation of these new variants. So now we have the UK variant, the Brazil variant, and the South African variant circulating. We expect the UK variant to be the dominant variant by March, and we expect the South African variant to continue to rise. The South African variant, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines don't seem to protect as well. Okay, so we also have to keep that in mind, that we've got these variants and the vaccines may not be quite as protective as we thought they were with the original corona variant. So, that's being monitored. We'll have to see what happens with that. So again, with this virus mutating, with more transmissible strains, it's still really, really important that you put your mask on, okay? Knowing that you're much less likely to have problems yourself, but you're protecting your fellow humans.
And one big thing, the new companies that are coming out with vaccines, J&J is coming online here very shortly with that single-dose vaccine. There are others, but this is going to play a big role in getting these immunizations out, getting everybody shot that wants to be anyway, and we're getting closer to that just daily, right?
We are, and the other thing that's happened is Pfizer has been able to take their production time and go from 110 days to 60 days. So they've done some new techniques to cut their production time almost in half. So they'll be able to produce more doses. J&J will be going to the Vaccine and Biologics Committee next Thursday, a week from this Thursday. And in all likelihood, they will get approval and that they'll be approved probably within 2 weeks from today. And so the J&J vaccine, they have millions of doses ready to go, supposedly. Single injection, this will be a big game changer as well. So I think we have a lot of optimism that the pipeline is going to increase over the next 3 to 4 weeks with the addition of a new vaccine and the shrinkage of production time from Pfizer. So yeah, there'll be more vaccine available.
What about the resistance curve that you and I have talked about? I saw a statistic the other day that said that there's as many as 30% is the percentage of people saying they don't think they're going to get a vaccination.
I think a lot of people are just, it's sort of wait and watch, okay? I'm not going to be the first to get that, but then they see their neighbors get it and their family members get it and they're all doing okay. I think that will gradually change over time. I think you're going to probably have resistance with any vaccine, 15 to 20% of people.
And I want to, before we run out of time here, I want to put this up on the screen because I just love this. It's an article about frontline workers that you don't think about, the housekeepers, the caretakers, the people that are cleaning these hospitals. And Doc, I know you spent your whole life in the medical profession, and that was just a thrilling article to read. I mean, you literally wouldn't be able to do the great work that you've done without these folks, and they've been putting themselves at risk, and they deserve to be recognized and acknowledged. I just thought that was great.
Yeah, that really was great. I wish they would do that more often because you know what? You can have the best operating rooms, the best doctors, the best nurses, but if you don't have people cleaning rooms, you don't have patients going to the hospital. And, every part of the chain of care is just as important as the next. So that person cleaning that hospital room is just as important as me or anybody else because healthcare doesn't happen without them. And, they're lower wage people, they're less recognized people. So the fact that the newspaper gave them that recognition was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that was your feel-good story for the day. Couple of quick hitters here. As far as reopenings are concerned, the changes that are being made, are we getting ahead of ourselves a little, generally speaking? Do you think it's about right, or do you have any sense for this at all? A lot of this is political.
We are absolutely ahead of where we should be. We still have circulating virus. Only a small percentage of the population has been vaccinated. We now have these more transmissible variants. To be changing our mandates of, not mandating masks in bars and restaurants and gyms it's way ahead of where we should be.
And schools, that's big time news every day. I've got an article on that I'll put up on the screen. It looks like there is some sense that schools can reopen on some basis sometime soon. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And I think it's very, very local and regional. So if you have a locale that has a low transmission rate, I think it really is essential to reopen schools. And why is that? Well, as a privileged white person, reopening school means, my kids go to school. But as a socioeconomic or ethnic disadvantaged person, their kids are not only dependent on schools for learning, they may depend on schools for food, after school activities, socialization.
Yes.
And so I think it's incredibly important that we get these kids back to school. And when you look at the data on transmissibility with kids, it's really startlingly low, in my opinion, based on what I've seen. The kids are not passing the virus amongst themselves very readily. Kids are not getting, for the most part, very sick. Yes, there's the multi-system inflammatory syndrome and different things, but that's only a very small percentage of kids. So I think that in appropriate situations, in appropriate locales where there's low transmission rate, and if we can get the school teachers and all the ancillary staff vaccinated, I think kids should be back in school. Yeah.
There has to be some concern, though, with kids in some of these cultures and neighborhoods and environments going home to parents and grandparents in some of the that may not have been immunized, but a lot of the grandparents now are getting immunized because they can still, even though they don't transmit it amongst themselves or get too sick, they can give it to older people, right?
They can, but even then it seems transmissibility is not as great as with adults. So I think that we have to, it's a balancing act. It's a risk, like anything with COVID, it's a risk versus reward. And so we have to assess, in any given locality, what's the risk versus the reward? And sure, every family has a different home situation, and it's very hard to, generalize for everybody. But I think in the long run, getting kids back to school, getting kids back into a routine, getting kids back with their friends, getting kids back where they can get meals and have that socialization is really important. And I think we can do that, again, assessing at a local level.
Well, let me talk from my personal perspective, because really that's all I've got. So I'm going to, hopefully I'm going to get the second shot here. I'm going to be fully immunized with what's available right now anyway. And I'm thinking, well, I can duck in and out of large buildings that are well ventilated for brief periods of time for things that I have to do. I'm not going to hang out and, sit at the end of a bar for hours at a time, although I used to do that when I was a younger person, but I'm not going to do that any longer. I can be outdoors all that I want to. I can move about in outdoor venues, plays and music and that kind of stuff, but probably not going to want to be in closed areas where there's not a lot of air circulation. Is that an accurate way to think about it?
Yeah, but I would even ducking in and out of big buildings, I would still be wearing your mask.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, that's okay. And being outside is certainly okay, although it's a little chilly for lots of outdoor activity. But I don't think that we can change how we operate right now. I think we still have to just, when you go out to a building inside, you put a mask on. End of story. I don't care if it's in a big building, a little building. And yes, air circulation certainly has a lot to do with it, but it's about habit, and the habit should still be wearing a mask when you go indoors.
Great. Well, we've run out of time as always. I probably got other questions, but the good thing is the doc's good enough to come back and we can ask him next time. I love to give you the closing comment here, Doc. Wrap it up for us. Give us a thought here as we head out of this edition of the podcast by George.
Light at the end of the tunnel. We are making rapid progress at getting people vaccinated. We're going to be able to vaccinate more and more every day. Hang in there, folks. Continue your physical distancing. Continue your mask wearing. Do not let up on this right now. Don't let off the gas pedal, okay? Because we have new variants circulating. We have more transmissible variants circulating. It is not time to throw away the masks and throw caution to the wind. Okay?
There you
go.
go.
The quicker we can get people vaccinated, the quicker we can get this virus from not circulating throughout the population, the quicker we get back to normal, whatever normal is. And let me tell you something. This is a really interesting thing. So normally during the winter months, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of people in the hospital because of flu. Do you want to know how many hospitalizations we've had at Unity Point in Des Moines for flu?
Not many.
0.
Wow.
We've not had one flu-related hospitalization. So guess what? Wearing masks works.
Proven.
We don't transmit viruses. We don't transmit flu. We don't transmit cold. We don't transmit COVID. Maybe masking becomes something we do in the winter over time. Who knows? But I was astounded. I heard that the other day. I was talking to our CEO. 0 hospitalizations for flu. Masks work. So continue to wear your masks.
Oh, that's news. Well, that's a free prescription there, folks. That's your free medical advice.
There you
go. That's from Dr. Andrew Nish. He's our medical expert and a good friend of the podcast. And folks, I hope you like this. And I hope you're able to tune in frequently to Podcasts by George. Again, we're available on YouTube. I like for people to subscribe there, ring the notification bell so that you get all the videos, because a lot of work goes into those. We're available in audio on iTunes and Spotify and the iHeartRadio app. And of course, we're always available in video on Facebook. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up for this time. That's all there is, folks. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.